Disclaimer. This is an audiobook recording performed for entertainment purposes through fair use. I do not claim any of the text being read to be mine or written by me. This is Twisted by Laurie Halse Anderson. Warning. This story is not for children. It contains talks of abuse, violence, assault, both sexual and physical, drugs, alcohol, and suicidal ideation. Listener discretion is advised. 11. I stumbled downstairs for breakfast around noon. 6 fried eggs and a quart of orange juice later, I noticed a vanilla frosted layer cake decorated with pink rosebuds sitting on the counter. I reached for a knife just as Mom came around the corner. She slapped my hand. "Don't touch. It's not for us." "Who's it for?" "The Milburys." "You made them a sucking up cake?" "This is not a sucking up cake. This is an apology cake for Bethany's accident. The last thing this family needs is to have your father fired. So you're going to deliver it and apologize." "No way. I won't. I can't. You don't understand, Mom. She's Bethany. She's the Bethany. She thinks I'm the biggest bag of language of manure in the whole state. And I'm not delivering that cake. You can't force me. Besides, it'll piss Dad off if I go over there." "This was your father's idea, Tyler. And if you don't walk this over to the Milburys this second, you'll have to deal with him." 12. I came up with a new apology every step of the way. "Bethany, I am an idiot. Bethany, words failed to convey the depth of my sorrow. I am really, Bethany, beautiful Bethany, wherefore art thou?" The cake was beginning to sag in the heat. "Hurry up, moron." After I passed through the entrance to the gates of the Hampton Club and Estate, I froze. I lifted the cake above my head and sniffed my pits. I should have put on more deodorant before I left, or cologne. Did my shorts smell too? Did the Mulberrys have dogs? Would they send them out to attack me? Would the dogs rip off my clothes and feast on my flesh, leaving the cake as a sticky stain on the driveway? I took 2 steps and stopped again, the visual of having my clothes ripped off in front of Bethany Mulberry. A sprinkler system kicked on. I sprinted. Only a few drops made it onto the cake, but between the heat and the water, the rosebuds were dissolving. Running caused the frosting to lean dangerously, so I slowed to a power walk, sticking to the shady sides of the street, keeping my eyes open for out-of-control sprinklers and other dangers. I hustled up to the Milburys' door and rang the bell. Mrs. Milbury answered. She blinked when she saw me, but then remembered her lines. "Tyler!" I held up the cake. "My mother sent this for Bethany." She waited. I sent it too. Am sending it. I mean, I'm the one carrying it. I'm here, to see how she is after what happened, I'm truly sorry, Mrs. Milbury." She took the cake from me. "Nothing to apologize for, Tyler. Those waiters had no experience and never should have worked a party like ours. It's not your fault they couldn't hold trays of glasses." Okay, I was confused, but she hadn't killed me, and that was what counted. I could go home and tell Mom, mission complete. "Why don't you come in and chat with Bethany?" No, I can't. I have somewhere else to be." "On a Sunday afternoon?" "It's a Sunday school. Sunday afternoon school. Church stuff." Her mouth dropped open in surprise. "Why, Tyler Miller, handsome and spiritual too? You're much deeper than you look. But I'm sure the Lord wouldn't mind you if you take a few minutes to make an injured girl feel better." Her eyes narrowed until they reminded me of the business end of a rifle. "Don't you agree?" "Yes, ma'am. Whatever you say, ma'am." She blinked, and suddenly she was Mrs. Bryce Milbury, society queen again. "Follow me." Their front hall looked like a hotel lobby. White walls, gold-framed mirrors, A table with fake flowers stuck in a vase and a giant staircase winding its way up to the second floor. Muzak was in the air. She led me to the basement door and down the steps to the media room. You could have screened a movie for a dozen friends there and still had enough space for a poker tournament. The newest Sony flat screen was mounted on the wall. Actually, I took up the whole wall. The other walls were covered in framed NFL jerseys, signed. But I wasn't there to drool. I was there to grovel. Bethany was half buried in a yellow, overstuffed chair, watching a lion sleep under a tree on the TV. She was wearing a Washington Warriors tennis team t-shirt and gray sweatpants rolled up to her knee, and the peanut butter colored cat was on her lap, its tail curled around her waist like a bracelet. Her left foot, wrapped in bandages, rests on the pillow on the coffee table. 3 crutches lay in pieces on the carpet. "What's he doing here?" she asked her mother. "He came to cheer you up," Mrs. Milbury said. "I'll just put this cake in the fridge." "I don't want cheering. Make him go. Leave the cake." Mrs. Milbury shook her head. "Don't want to tempt you, sweetie. Not while you can't exercise." "I said leave it," Bethany said louder. I glanced around for an emergency exit. Mrs. Milbury set the tired cake on the coffee table and put her hands on her hip. "Maybe Tyler would like to sit with you while I run to Teresa's and look over the crutches. I don't want you to be alone." "Sure thing," I said. Bethany sighed dramatically. Her mother wagged her finger back and forth. "Just don't eat all the cake before I get back." I was alone with Bethany Miller in her basement. Was this a new level of pain in Tophet, or was it a dream? What was I supposed to do? Talk? A male lion on the TV shook his mane and rolled on to his back in the dust. A lioness stretched and yawned as the sun set over the savannah. "They're headed out for the hunt," the voiceover explained. "Say something, say something, say something, say something, say something." Bethany picked at a pale pink polish on her left thumbnail. The cat sneered at me. "Say anything, you pathetic loser." I picked up the center post of one of the broken crutches. It had a deep crack running down it and splinters of wood bristling out of one side. "What happened to this?" I said. "Brilliant opening. Great job." "Chip, was he making firewood?" "Fooling around with his stupid friends." "Huh?" "Careful, don't scare her off by grunting." The lioness circled a herd of gazelles that were at the watering hole. Bethany muted the TV. "Chip and his friends. They have a wrestling club. The crutches were props." "Chip's on the wrestling team?" "Club, not team. They pretend to be professional wrestlers. It's ridiculous." She held out her hand, checking her nails. The cat jumped off her lap and strutted over to me, snipping my sneakers. "Chip's an ass," she said. The words flew out of my mouth before I could stop them. Got that right. "He crumpled the hood of Mom's Jag once," Bethany said. "Accidentally dropped a 20-pound weight on it. Told Mom it happened in the grocery store parking lot. He almost got her to sue for damages." "Some people get away with everything," I said. A lioness singled out a weak gazelle. She was on it in 2 strides, her mouth ripping at the neck. Claws dug deep in the gazelle's flesh. Bethany watched the screen without reacting to the bloodshed. "He never gets caught." She set the remote on the arm of the chair. "I saw him push you. I tried to tell Dad, but he didn't believe me." "Oh man," the dam burst. "I am so sorry. I wish you knew even 0.1% of how sorry I am. It doesn't matter that Chip pushed me. It was my fault. Can I kill myself here, or should I do it outside so that I don't mess up the carpet and upset your mother?" Groveling time. I laid my face down on the floor in front of her chair. "What did you say?" I lifted my head and blew a piece of fluff out of my mouth. "I said, can you forgive me? I'm a moron, a loser." She covered her ears. Stop. Enough. Apology accepted. The whole thing was stupid. The caterers told us to use plastic glasses, but Mom pitched a fit and insisted on the real thing. She grew up worshipping Dallas. Gag. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. Get up, Tyler. She grabbed a handful of my t-shirt and pulled. I sat up on my knees in front of her chair. When she let go of my shirt, her hand brushed up by my cheek. It smelled like soap and ice cream and girl, pure and perfect girl. Her touch set my face on fire, my face and everything else. Let's eat cake, she said. The cat twitched its tail and left. 13. Bethany sucked some frosting off her finger and moaned. The moan woke up my trouser snake. Down, boy. Down, I say. So I wandered up to the kitchen to get some forks and paper towels and room to breathe. When the snake crawled back under a rock, I went downstairs. Bethany had switched the channel to a black and white movie. She kept the sound muted, and we took turns making up dialogue for the action scenes. She slowly worked her way through a hunk of cake. I couldn't eat. This was very confusing. I could always eat. Even when I had the flu, I could eat. I'd puke, brush my teeth, and beg Mom for some chips or a sandwich or some French toast. But there I was in front of one of my mother's cakes, my sainted, blessed mother, and a pretty girl, and my stomach had shut down. I switched the channel to one of those Saturday afternoon shout fests with plastic politicians and did a whole play-by-play as if it was a boxing match. Bethany laughed. My stomach relaxed as if that one sound, her laughter, had been what it had been secretly hungry for my whole life. When a commercial came on, Bethany scooted forward in her seat and tried to stand. As soon as she put pressure on her bandaged foot, she winced and fell back into the chair. What's wrong? I asked. You're in pain. That's bad. Can I help? What do you want me to do? Oh my God, shut up. I won't let you fall. I swear. I won't fall on you. Chill, Tyler. I need to go to the bathroom. Here, I said, holding out my hand to her. Let me help you. I pulled her to her feet. She teetered a moment and clutched my arms. Her left knee was bent so that her foot wouldn't touch the floor. I was 6'3". She was 5'6", maybe 5'7". There was no way for her to sling her arm around my shoulders. Put your arms around my waist and lean, I said. She did, and then she tried to hop, but she stumbled. I quickly put both arms around her waist to keep her from falling. We're not very good at this, she said. Nobody is. That's why they invented crutches. Try again. We gimped together an awkward 3 steps, and Bethany stopped. I'm afraid I'm going to have to put weight on it, and the stitches will rip open. Then there's only one thing to do, I said. Before she could say another word, I bent down and picked her up. She was a little heavier than I thought, but it was good weight, warm and soft. You're going to kill yourself. I am Tyler, the Amazing Hulk. Which way, Your Highness? She pointed to the stairs. Up. I got stronger with every step, heart pumping steadily. This was better than any fantasy I'd ever had. Her body was hard muscle and her skin felt like silk. I am your servant, madame, I said. I vow to carry you everywhere and feed you cake. Keep feeding me cake and you won't be able to carry me. I paused at the top of the stairs. I'll always be able to carry you. She blinked. Then the door of the garage slammed open. Bethany's entire body tightened. Chip! What are you doing home? Chip froze in the doorway, trying to make sense of the sight of me, A, in his house, and B, carrying his sister, who was C, enjoying both A and B. What the hell are you doing here? He snarled. He's helping me, Bethany said, which is more than I can say for you. Put me down, Tyler. Your wish is my command. I carefully lowered her to the ground and helped her onto a kitchen chair. Chip pulled out a quart of Gatorade from the oversized refrigerator. He took a few gulps and wiped his mouth on his arm. Mom wants you to take you down to Monahan's. She made me come get you. Why? The cat came from under the table and twisted itself around Chip's ankle. They have a bunch of crutches. I'm supposed to drive you there so that you can pick. Dipwad here is not invited. I have to go home anyway, I said. Are you sure? Bethany asked. You could come with us if you want. Chip put the bottle on the counter and walked to the door. Don't be such a slut, Beth. Tyler's leaving. He smirked and made a sweeping motion with his arm, ushering me outside. I crossed the kitchen in 2 steps and put my hand around his throat and lift him off the ground with one arm. Heave him across the room. He slides the length of the counter and lands on the kitchen table. The fruit bowl crashes on his head and an apple lands in his mouth. Little stars dance in circles over him and his eyes roll up and... Are you okay, Tyler? Bethany asked. Yeah, I said. I better go. Chip stepped aside as I crossed the threshold. Bethany said, See you tomorrow. Huh? I stopped. School's starting. Duh. Maybe you can carry me to class. Chip slammed the door in my face. I walked through the 5-car garage to the open door, past Chip's Jeep, down the driveway, along the sidewalk of the movie-set neighborhood of the Hampton Club and Estates. See you tomorrow, she had said. The lawn sprinkler of the house on the corner was still flinging water. I stood in the cold spray until I was soaked through to my boxers. 14. My plan for the first day of school was to roll out of bed, roll into my clothes, roll down the stairs, and roll out the door onto the bus. One day riding the bus wasn't going to kill me. I had promised Hannah. She started pounding on my door a full 13 minutes before my alarm went off. Tyler John Miller, you get out of that bed right now. Mom said. It sounded like she was going to punch a hole through my wall. All those middle school girl power sports have made my little sister a whole lot stronger than she looked. Get up! Thwump, thwump, thwump. Mom said, I don't want to miss the bus. It was going to take a full week for her to figure out that high school was school, plus 7 layers of social hell, especially for freshman girls, with too much homework and rules dreamed up by psychopaths. Then we'd see who was eager to get out the door. I put on a shirt, boxers, and shorts, all clean in honor of the first day of school, and trudged downstairs, hoping Mom had remembered to go to the store. Hannah took one look at me and let out a blood-curdling scream. You can't go to school like that. Morning to you, too. Any milk, Mom? Mom shook a nearly empty jug. You can get half a bowl. I'll go to the grocery store after work, I promise. Hannah grabbed my wrist in a death grip. No food until you change. You are not going to school like that. I wanted to blow her off, but she was halfway into a meltdown. I let her drag me upstairs, where she handed me brand new t-shirt and shorts and shoved me into the bathroom. Hannah opened the door while I was zipping up my shorts. Do you mind? I asked. I don't want to be late. She sat on the edge of the sink. Turn around and don't tuck in the shirt. It makes you look like a dork. You think? You're gonna be late, Mom called from downstairs. I untucked the shirt. Hannah tugged at the shorts so they rode lower on my hips. Better, she said. She rolled up the sleeves a little to show off my guns. Much better. Now, one more thing. She grabbed a tube of something off the sink and made me bend over so that she could rub the gunk in my hair. When she was done, I stepped back. Take a look, she said. The mirror showed some guy, a not too shabby guy, I'd never seen before. Tall, tan, beefy biceps, a hair thing going on, and maybe a little danger in his eyes. I squinted to look even more dangerous, but it just made me look nearsighted. See? You're officially an asset. Hannah stood on her tiptoes and pecked me on the cheek. Thanks, Ty. Now hurry up or I'll miss everything. 15. The bus let us out in front of the building. Hannah was about to burst with excitement, which would have been disgusting because she would have sprayed blood and guts and glitter in every direction. She was an innocent, a freshman, one of the sad believers who thought high school was where they got to be popular and smart and happy. Above all, happy. My sister had watched too many movies. The enlightened ones? the wounded sophomores, jaded juniors, and wise seniors, we trudged to the door, a prison gang so beaten down we didn't need ankle shackles. A pearl white Jaguar XK8 convertible was parked in the primo visitor spot in the front. Bethany Milbury and her mom were parked inside of it, arguing like cats in a bag. Knock on the window. Offer to carry Bethany inside. Offer to wash the car with your tongue. Mrs. Milbury was screaming and waving her long, bony finger back and forth in front of her daughter's face. Bethany crossed her arms over her chest and slumped against the seat. Maybe later. We trudged some more. As we got closer to the front door, Hannah poked me. You okay? I asked. Why are people staring at us? They weren't staring exactly. They were watching. All the social radar systems were on alert. Hannah faked a little smile to a total stranger. It's you, isn't it? She was right, of course. People had ignored me when I was nerd boy, but that changed after I was arrested. A third of my fellow students kept their distance, like I might be wearing a bomb strapped to my waist. Another third looked down their noses at me because I had to work with the custodial staff. The third was all thumbs up and yo, Tyler, because spray painting a couple $1,000s worth of damage to the school and getting my very own probation officer made me their hero. A lot of kids would tell you being taken away in a squad car was the coolest thing I'd ever done. You're hallucinating, I told my sister. Mr. Hughes stood in the middle of the lobby with a bullhorn in one hand and a walkie-talkie in the other. He stopped mid-bellow to give me the evil eye. Mr. Miller, he growled. Mr. Hughes, I tried to growl back. He tapped the corner of his eye with his fingers. Remember, he warned. I was supposed to remember the little talk we had in his office a couple weeks earlier, except it wasn't so little. Mr. Hughes had lectured me for so long about the consequences and responsibilities that my butt fell asleep. I was supposed to remember that this was a privilege. I was back in school because so many people, my parents, my probation officer, a couple of teachers, had gone out on a limb for me. I was supposed to remember that I was on thin ice. I was supposed to remember that I was on a short leash. Quite a vision for those folks standing on the quivering tree branch with me at the end of a dog collar skating on thin ice on a pond. While he lectured me, I had shifted back and forth from one butt cheek to the other, trying to get the blood flow back. Mr. Hughes had pointed out that I wasn't listening. My father agreed with him, nodding energetically. Dad's head bounced up and down so much during that 1 hour little talk, I thought for sure he'd get a concussion. After we left Mr. Hughes' office, Dad yelled at me for being disrespectful. Then he made me mow the lawn. Mr. Hughes stopped tapping the corner of his eye. Have a good day, he said. I was overcome by the urge to do something profoundly stupid, like pee on a flagpole or throw myself under a bus just to see the look on his face. But my little sister, wide-eyed and 14, tugged at my elbow. That was the principal, right? She asked as soon as we were out of earshot. The one and only, I sighed. She dragged me out of the flow of traffic into an alcove. Here, hold these. She handed me her book and purse and rolled down the bottom of her skirt, exposing a new belly button piercing that looked infected. When did you get that? I asked. Mom's gonna kill you. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. She folded down the top of her mini skirt, showing way too much skin. I never realized you had a reputation, Ty. I'm so proud of you. It's not a good reputation, I pointed out. Are you kidding me? The principal hates you. That rocks. How do I look? Like a mistake. Shut up. She took her books back and tucked them under her arm, then tucked another arm through mine. It's the attitude, Tyler. It's all about the attitude. If you act like Tyler Miller, emo boy who's always screwing up, your life and mine is going to suck. You have to be Tyler, danger guy, gangsta Miller. They don't like gangstas on the debate team, I pointed out. They should. They might win for a change. Her smile turned back on, and we rejoined the crowd streaming toward the cafeteria, the worst place in the world for a freshman girl, which was, of course, why she wanted to go there. A pack of dogs was prowling at the door, senior guys looking for virgins or semi-virgin freshmen, only to devour. "Fix your shirt," I said through my teeth. "Get over yourself," she said. "I've been waiting for this my whole life." School was back in session. Let the mind control begin. 16. Homeroom sucked because Bethany wasn't there. I figured she was still fighting with her mom. On the bright side, Chip wasn't there either. I had forgotten to look for my schedule before we left the house, so as soon as the pledge was over, I asked Mr. Irwin if he had an extra copy. He rolled his eyes, but he had been a homeroom teacher for 120-some-odd years, so he was prepared. He pulled a piece of paper from the pile on his desk. "Here you go, Mr. Miller," he said. "Enjoy." I looked at it once. Twice. My head hurt. Cruel and unusual punishment, a.k.a. my schedule. Calculus, gym, AP English, lunch. French 4, study hall. AP Art History, AP U.S. Government and Politics. Yes, I had agreed to this, but in my defense, we put my schedule together after my first week of working at Pirelli's, and the blisters on my hands had all popped and opened, and I was so tired I couldn't remember my name. Mom and Dad were both happy with the schedule. I do remember that part. Signing me up for indentured servitude made their eyes sparkle. It seemed like such a good idea at the time. So calc baffled me in the first 10 minutes. First period, waste. In gym, they lectured us about not leaving valuables in the gym lockers, and lectured us about personal safety, and lectured us about proper footwear, and lectured us, and lectured us, and lectured us, and lectured us. After class, I plowed my way down the hall, feeling the eyes, trying to play Hannah's game of, "Hey, I don't give a rat's ass about any of this, and you should be a little afraid of me, just to be safe." It was harder than it sounded, walking around like a tough guy and keeping my arms flexed and pretending that this was all natural. I tripped over a lot of freshmen. And then I walked into my AP English class. Oh, the humanity. On the board, Mr. Salvador had listed the books and a play I was supposed to have read over the summer. I looked around at my classmates who had, of course, done the readings, highlighted their favorite lines, and written essays about characters and motivations for fun. I picked up one of the books and flipped through it. Don't get me wrong, I like reading, but some books should come with a warning label, like caution, contains characters and plots guaranteed to induce sleepiness. Do not attempt to drive at or operate heavy machinery after ingesting more than one chapter. Has been known to cause blindness, seizures, and a terminal loathing of literature. Should be taken under the strict supervision of a highly trained English teacher, preferably one who grades on a curve. I talked to Mr. Salvador after class and explained a few things about my summer. He gave me a week to catch up, and in light of my special circumstances, then he nodded seriously and said it was time for me to buckle down. I almost asked him if I was on thin ice, but I didn't want to be put on a short leash on my first day. French was kind of a blur. 50 ways to ask for a stick of bread. My study hall was filled with sophomores who reeked of lip gloss and body wash. Art history, well, at least I'd get to look at breasts. U.S. Gov and Paul was a different story. The teacher went into gory detail about battlefield conditions during the Revolutionary War. Explained the best way to kill an opponent with a bayonet. It was cool, right up until the point where he assigned an essay, using 3 primary sources, due the next day. On the bus ride home, I borrowed Hannah's calculator. I had a minimum of 6 hours of homework, and it was only the first day of class. 6 hours of homework a day times 180 days until finals equals way too much homework. Welcome to senior year. Bam! Face through a window. I didn't have a choice. I'd have to face the dragon. I'd do it after dinner when he was bloated on double pepperoni with onions. 17. Dad liked to call the lair his study. It was just a basement with spiders and damp patches on the ceiling tiles. His office stuff, desk, computer, file drawers, and a bookshelf, filled one corner. A burgundy leather recliner was positioned next to a high-end Bose stereo. His model train set stretched along the long, custom-built table in the middle of the room. Framed accounting certificates hung on the walls. He had retreated down there after dinner. I gave him a half hour, then followed. He was hunched over his desk, face on his computer screen, wearing a faded maroon University of Chicago sweatshirt and big headphones, the best money could buy. In the bluish light, his eyes looked like they had disappeared into their sockets. "Dad?" I said. He didn't move. "Dad?" The headphones were plugged into the stereo. A CD case was on top of it. Wagner. Wagner was a headbanger of a composer from the 1800s. I tapped on his shoulder. "Dad!" He gasped and spun around in his chair. Paper scattered on the floor. As soon as he saw it was me, he glared. He pulled off the headphones and dropped them around his neck. The opera voices coming through them were loud, but tinny. "I knocked," I said. "I didn't hear you." He bent down to pick up the fallen papers. "Do you need something?" Breathe. Deep breath. Deep breath. "Mom says there's more pizza." He tapped through the papers, then tapped them on the desk again to straighten them. "Tell your mother I've had enough to eat." "Okay." "Anything else? I do have to finish this report." The air conditioning kicked in and blew cold, clammy air through the basement. Dad's nose wrinkled. He flung the headphones on the desk, strode over across the room, and shouted up the stairs, "Linda, turn off the damn air conditioning. It's only 75 outside." There was something in his voice that made me want to ram his head into the concrete foundation. "You don't have to say it like that," I said. "Like what?" "Like Mom's an idiot. I asked her to turn it on. I lied. I was hot." "So why don't you go up and turn it off?" "So I will. In a minute." I walked over to the model train layout. He'd spent years building it. Santa drove the engine. The freight cars were loaded down with elves and presents. The track wound around a vintage village, by a lake, and into a mountain tunnel. The mountain was covered with fake snow. Mom's touch. I rocked the engine back and forth on the track. "Don't touch that," he said. "You know how fragile it was. Is there anything else you want?" I wiped my hand on the front of my shorts. "Yeah, I need to change my schedule." "At school? Why? Is there a conflict?" 3 APs plus calc is insane. I'm not that smart, Dad." "Your grades from last year were good enough to get you in." "Just barely, and only because Mom and you made a big stink about it. I'm not asking to drop all of them, just one of the APs, or let me switch out of calc." "No, you're not changing anything." He sat down and leaned toward the screen. "I have work to do." That was Dad code for go away, and I was supposed to say, "Okay," and trudge up the stairs, grateful he hadn't yelled at me. But desperate times call for desperate measures. I stepped closer. "I can't do that level of work, sir. Not in every class I'll flunk." The muscles tightened around his jaw and up the side of his skull. He inhaled deeply through his nose and rolled his neck from side to side. "You want me to take care of your problems again?" His voice was low. "You guys forced me into these classes. I'm just telling you it's not going to work." "When are you going to grow up, Tyler?" One punch. A long slow-mo shot to the soft underbelly of the beast to make him double over. Just one punch. My fist so far inside of him that my knuckles scrape his spine. I tried not to clench my fists. "I'm so sick of this," he continued. "You expect me to wave a magic wand to make everything all better. Daddy'll talk to the teachers. Dad'll pay for the lawyer. Daddy fix." He spat out the words. Step closer, 2 steps, get in his face and remind him that I've that I have him by 6 inches and probably 40 pounds. Pick up the monitor and bring it down on his head. Shove the keyboard in his mouth and cram his skinny butt into the trash can. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and rolled his neck again. This discussion is over. He rolled the chair closer to the desk. You're staying in your classes, and you'll quit working for that pierogi fellow. Pirelli, Mr. Pirelli. I like working for him. He looked over his shoulder. It's not about what you like. The air conditioning shut down and the room fell silent. Sour air suspended between us. I'll be 18 in November, I reminded him. He put the headphones on and turned the volume up. 18. Mom started with the excuses as I came up the steps. He's under pressure at work. He's depressed again. He's just not good at communicating. He's worried about money. He's your father. You have to give him a chance. She was still at it when I closed my bedroom door. 19. Back in middle school, I had spent a lot of time hiding in the library. The guys who were hunting me down never looked there. One day, I remember, in 6th or 7th grade, the library TV was tuned to CNN and the breaking news banner was flashing in red. The camera zoomed in on a small plane, the kind with 2 seats and a propeller. It had flown into an office building in downtown Tampa, 20 stories off the ground. Smack! Nothing exploded. Nobody in the building was hurt, but a massive steel and glass wall had the tail end of an airplane sticking out of it. It took a long time before the reporters would admit it, but the teenager flying the plane was dead on impact. DOI. I remember watching the replays obsessively, trying to figure out what the kid's last second felt like. Did he feel everything? Did he feel nothing? Which would be worse? I called Mr. Pirelli that night and told him I couldn't work for him anymore because my dad wanted me to concentrate on school. He said he understood. I told him that I wished that I did. I reminded him to fill out the paperwork for my probation officer, and he said no problem, and that if I ever needed a job, I just had to ask. Before I went to school the next day, I sold the Wagner CD and broke it into 12 billion pieces with a hammer on the garage floor. I swept the pieces into a plastic bag and tossed them in the neighbor's garbage can. 20. Bethany Milbury smiled at me in homeroom every day for the next 2 weeks. The first couple of times she did it, I turned around to see who was standing behind me. Then the day came where she got up from her seat and hobbled over to where I sit in the chair in front of me. "Hi," she said. Stunned silence on my part. She blinked her eyes. "Are you mad at me or something?" I choked out an answer, and she smiled so brightly that small holes were burned into my retinas. She let me sign her crutch on an open space close to her left hand. She had a packet of Sharpies in her purse, and I chose red. After that, I performed superhuman feats of speed to make it to her 4th and 8th period classes so I could accidentally be standing close by in case she decided to smile again. She let me carry her books. People were confused. Why is Beauty with the dweeb? I didn't know either, but as long as she wanted me around, I was going to be there. Meanwhile, my grades were being sucked into the quicksand. I learned that I remembered nothing from Trig and that Paradise Lost was not the book that they based survival reality shows on, and that using search engine translations was a bad way to do French homework. Luckily, Dad had to work 14 hours a day because some government audit. He left a letter taped to my bedroom door explaining that I should cut my hair if I want people to take me seriously. If my luck held, he'd have a heart attack before report cards came out. Yoda's campaign to make Hannah fall in love with him was in full swing. He drove her everywhere, even to buy tampons. If she had a test, he helped her study. If she sneezed, he appeared out of nowhere with a tissue. Every time she had a game, Yoda was pacing on the sidelines. But Hannah was holding out. It didn't matter what Yoda did, she refused to move him from friend who was a boy status to boyfriend. It was killing him. He told me his problem was a lack of the jock gene. He had a permanent doctor's note from Jim because he had been hurt so many times. But to capture the heart of my twerp jockess sister, he was willing to do something athletic. After a lot of pleading and attempted bribery, the JV football coach finally gave in and offered him a 2-week trial. Yoda could manage the team if he could fit with the team's chemistry. I had a bad feeling about it.